Assassin's Creed Origins versus Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Which is the better game? In this video, I'm going to take a look at both games and compare the setting, the story, the protagonist, the side content and overall value of each game. And then at the end of the video, I'll go over my personal preference. Now, since I like both of these games, I'll try my best to go into this video with a non-biased perspective. Now, I will admit, this video will contain spoilers about the endings of each game's story, so do bear that in mind. And just real quick, if you do enjoy this video, do consider hitting that subscribe button. And without any more delay, let's get right into it. So let's start off with the world and setting of both games. Assassin's Creed Origins takes us back in time quite a fair amount to ancient Egypt, but more specifically during the time of Cleopatra's reign and the rise of Julius Caesar. Ancient Egypt in Origins was more so set in a time frame where the Great Pyramids were already built way before, and we see them in the game as kind of ancient relics. It's definitely not a surprise to see why these pyramids were once regarded as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Ancient Egypt is a setting that does so well to fit with the story of Assassin's Creed, as it gives us a glimpse into the birth of the Hidden Ones, as well as a perfectly crafted rendition of Egypt to explore. There is honestly quite a staggering amount to discover in Origins world. You've got a desert landscape that quite literally stretches from one side of the map to the other. There's stunning cities like Alexandria, Cyrene and even Memphis. There's abandoned tombs, the pyramids and even the Sphinx. So in simple terms, there is a lot to offer in the world of Origins. But just going back to the desert real quick, it's definitely something I have to talk about because its depiction in Origins is truly remarkable. Little details like sandstorms occurring randomly or experiencing hallucinations. You see, it's often said that encountering illusions while moving in a desert is a common occurrence. In Assassin's Creed Origins, you'll come across these hallucinations and they're not just superficial additions, they carry deeper meaning to them. Among my favorites, one instance features unexpected rain, but instead of actual rainfall, it's a downpour of scarabs and insects. Another scenario involves seeing apparitions or individuals who are not actually present. You might spot a figure resembling Bayek lying on the ground, only to watch it vanish, encounter disappearing enemies, or even witness a mysterious ghostly figure walking alongside Bayek. And these are just a few of the examples of the numerous hallucinations you'll encounter in the desert. The developers implemented this little detail exceptionally well, and it is something you can easily overlook whilst playing the game. It is pretty obvious why this game took an extra year in development. Another aspect of the world in Origins that I thoroughly enjoyed is the presence of wildlife. From crocodiles and hippos inhabiting the Nile River to hyenas and jackals roaming the desert, the world of Origins simply just teems with animal life. And it's crazy because Origins is a game that is not known for its wildlife, so to see such a range of different animals is quite cool. What's more, these animals serve as a practical purpose beyond just being there for the sake of being animals. Hunting them for materials to upgrade weapons and equipment adds a touch of realism, making the world feel much more alive and immersive. Now when it comes to Assassin's Creed Odyssey's world, honestly it fits in the same boat. The world of Odyssey is also stunning. It's set more specifically within a time period during the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta. Assassin's Creed Odyssey's world is a world that's full of many islands and regions to explore. My personal favorites are the island of Laconia, which gives me more of a countryside kind of vibe to it, that has a lot from beaches to mountains. There's also the region of Phocis, which is a mountainous environment that gives me a vibrant autumn vibe to it. Those are just 2 I've mentioned, and there are so much more. What struck me the most about Assassin's Creed Odyssey's world was how the developers brought ancient Greece to life. Since we of course know it's set during the Peloponnesian War, the game's scale of conflict is pretty large, and the way Ubisoft incorporated a full-scaled war as the theme of Odyssey was done pretty well, to be fair. As we explore and progress through the world of Odyssey, we were able to encounter both historical figures like Socrates, Pericles and Alcibiades, and even fictional characters that feel just as authentic like Barnabas and Marcos. The attention to detail in the world building is a standout for me, as it's filled with small touches that make the setting feel more dynamic. This can be things like the way the sunlight filters through the trees, to even the sound of the waves crashing against the shore on each island. As much as people like to shit on this game for it not being a quote-unquote Assassin's Creed game, I'm not ashamed to say it's my comfort game. There's just something about Odyssey's world that makes me want to randomly just boot up the game and walk through the likes of Athens. It's the same as The Witcher 3, as both of these games are games I consider to be my comfort games. Now I will say there is a downside to Odyssey's world, and just because I like the game, I'm not blind to the fact that there's a flaw that needs to be addressed, and that is simply the design of cities and terrain feel just copied and pasted in different areas. You see, the idea of ancient Greek in Odyssey is simply just one single consistent theme throughout, whereas in Origins, it's more diverse in landscapes and cities. You got a city like Alexandria, and then there's a polar opposite city like Memphis, and then you can even go to a more polar opposite city like Cyrene. Yes, there is a few exceptions in Assassin's Creed Odyssey's world, such as lively forests, barren volcanoes, volcanic islands and cities like Athens, but just think for a second of the cities in Odyssey. There is no difference between a lot of them. Now this doesn't make the world any less stunning and enjoyable, but if I had to pick a personal preference between ancient Egypt in Origins and ancient Greece in Odyssey, I'd have to go with ancient Egypt on this one. But both settings are easily my top 2 favorites in the entire series, and like I said, Odyssey's world is the reason why it's my comfort game. Now this might seem like a no-brainer. The story of both games are on 2 different spectrums to each other. On one hand you have a story that has one single ending, and on the other hand you have a story that consists of multiple endings, and your decisions shape the outcome in the end. However, that's not to say Origin's story is perfect and Odyssey's story is bad. In fact, let's first talk about Origin's story. So the story of Origins is a tale of revenge and justice. We know, very typical Assassin's Creed at this point. The story is set against the backdrop of ancient Egypt, where we're introduced to well-known historical figures such as Cleopatra and Julius Caesar. However, the game doesn't just stick to the well-trodden paths of history. Instead, it explores a later period in Egyptian history, highlighting the era's achievements and the cultural fusion with Greek and Roman societies. We take on the role of Bayek, a Magi who serves as the protector of Egypt's pharaoh and his people. So in terms of the whole revenge plot for this game, it truly kicks off when tragedy strikes. Bayek's son becomes the victim of a sinister plot during the pharaoh's visit to their village in Siwa, leading to the boy's untimely death. We see the likes of Bayek and his wife Aya driven by grief. They vow to take revenge against the Order of Ancients responsible for their son's death. So as we delve deeper to the story of Origins, we learn more about the Order's extensive influence across Egypt, intent on controlling the nation. You see, at first, the story of Origins initially centers on local politics and the protagonist's effort to counter the Order's schemes, gradually introducing the origins of the actual Assassin's Creed. The emotional core of the story lies in Bayek's journey, his mourning and his relationship with Aya, whose character is, in my opinion, very intriguing, yet massively underexplored, and she's a character that deserves to be fleshed out more. The game allows us to control Aya in certain segments, but these moments are very brief and lack the depth of exploration and development that the game gave to Bayek, which somewhat lessens the story's impact. I feel like Aya's character, despite being pretty important, is not given the gameplay depth that Bayek enjoys, making her contributions feel more like isolated episodes rather than a fully integrated part of the story. Now going back to the actual story of Origins, its progression from a tale of personal vendetta to a broader historical showcase is well executed, offering a relatively nuanced departure from the traditional Assassins vs Templar conflict. Now, as I mentioned at the start of this segment, there is one massive flaw in Origin's story, and that for me is near the ending where the introduction of our main antagonist Flavius is revealed. This to me falls very flat due to the lack of depth and memorability, which then affects the story's overall quality. It takes the story from a solid 9 to a disappointing 6 or 7. The portrayal of Flavius and his motivations are seen as a precursor to the Templar Order, lacking any type of mystery or charisma found in villains from the earlier games, such as Cesare Borgia, Al-Muwalim, and even Charles Lee. Now, aside from the main story, the game features a modern day subplot, but it's more of a choice regarding how deeply you want to dive into it. I guess you can explore the computer files and learn about Abstergo's current situation, but it's not really obligatory. Having the option though is a nice touch. So overall, Assassin's Creed Origins offers a compelling story that blends together historical intrigue with a tale of revenge, though it's slightly hindered by some gameplay and character development decisions. The story's transition from personal revenge to a larger story is done pretty well, to be honest, but the lackluster portrayal of the main villain and the limited exploration of Aya's character detract from that experience. The modern day side of the game and also the scenes where we see the Brotherhood created are more like nods to just please Assassin's Creed fans, so I feel like they could have benefited from more creative thought into the overall story. Now when it comes to Assassin's Creed Odyssey's story, I feel like it doesn't quite hit the mark in comparisons to Origin's story. I will say the modern day is done a lot better in Odyssey, and there was actually a plot related to it, whereas the modern day in Origins was just there for the sake of being there. In Assassin's Creed Odyssey we play as Layla Hassan once again. Now it's up to personal opinion whether Layla is a character worth investing in. I for one feel like the peak of modern day characters was during Assassin's Creed 1 to Assassin's Creed 3, with the whole Desmond era. I guess she could have been as iconic as Desmond had Ubisoft fleshed out her character more, diving into her backstory and forging an emotional bond with the player, which regrettably was not the case. I've always appreciated the modern day storyline in Assassin's Creed for its depth and different perspective on things. However, with the introduction of new animus technology and the blending of game and movie lore, along with nods to the broader Assassin's Creed universe through William Mar's actions, the modern day story in Odyssey starts to unravel, possibly leaving those not deeply entrenched in the lore a bit confused. But anyway, as for the actual story of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, it takes us into a tale set in 431 BCE, focused on familial strife and revenge, once again a common theme in this franchise. The game offers a choice between playing as Kassandra or Alexios, with Kassandra being the canonical choice. Now with my first ever playthrough, I chose Alexios, but I felt like his character was not really that interesting as a protagonist, even though they were both quite literally the same. But when I replayed the game recently, I opted for Kassandra, and it was definitely a lot better, because it felt like there was more of a stronger emotional connection, and I was impressed by the voice acting. Early in the game, we're pretty much running errands for Marcos, a very dopey character who has looked after you since childhood. The initial focus is on dealing with a local thug named the Cyclops, which eventually leads to meeting Barnabas. He generously offers you his ship and his crew, much like Adewale does in Black Flag, but with a Greek charm. If there's one thing I feel like Odyssey has over Origins, it's definitely the side characters in the main story. Now this might be an unpopular opinion, but characters like Marcos, Barnabas, Alcibiades, Pericles, Phoebe and others are more entertaining and memorable over the likes of Hepzibah, Apollodorus, Septimius and so on. Anyway, after the intro scene appears and the game's story truly opens up beyond Kefalonia, we get introduced to many islands, cities and different conflicts. As for the actual main quest, this involves tracking down your father, General Nicolaus of Sparta. I do appreciate how the game weaves, ancient Greek history into the story, especially through side quests and encounters with historical figures such as Pericles and Socrates, making the experience feel more authentic. Dialogue choices in Odyssey allow for varied interactions, affecting the game's outcome in surprising ways. This is something not present at all in Origins. In fact, I'm pretty sure there's about 1 or 2 dialogue choices in that game, but those are featured in side quests. Choices in Assassin's Creed Odyssey can lead to unexpected outcomes, such as a decision to spare a family early in the game, resulting in a widespread illness, and it affects the overall outcome of said storyline. But reflecting on the actual story's ending, I must admit it did not leave a lasting impression on me, similar to Origin's ending. Both were very lackluster. Depending on your choices, the ending can reunite Kassandra with their family under different circumstances, but these interactions often lack depth. I've said this in my Odyssey review. My first playthrough ended quite bad, with most family members not surviving. This of course relates to your decision making throughout the entire game, which is pretty unique. So in summary, while Odyssey's story may have its moments, the real enjoyment for me lay in exploring ancient Greece and upgrading my character. The game could have benefited from a more structured storytelling, particularly in how it handles the ending relating to Pythagoras and Atlantis, which was so random and just out of nowhere. But as for which overall story is better out of Origins than Odyssey, I'm going to go with Origins, purely because in that game, at least 90% of the story was interesting, whereas Odyssey's felt more like 30%, and it got slightly all over the place near the end, with the whole family reunion and Atlantis stuff. Okay, now that I've talked about the 2 most important parts of each game, or at least that's what I think are the most important parts, we'll now move on to Bayek versus Kassandra. Who is the better protagonist? Now, I'm going to say it as it is. I'm pretty sure 95% of you watching this would definitely pick Bayek. His character is a lot more fleshed out, there's more to him, and he's just overall a better protagonist in many ways. I guess that's the issue when having multiple choices in a main character. It'll lead to a less fleshed out and less developed character, and that's honestly what Kassandra or even Alexios is. There is a few aspects that make Kassandra better than Bayek though. For example, Kassandra's personality definitely shines a lot in terms of how humorous or witty she can be. She's also a lot stronger, as she is quite literally a demigod. But the reason why I prefer Bayek over Kassandra trumps a lot of reasons why Kassandra might be considered better. For one, the story of a parent and their child resonates with many people, making Bayek's journey of teaching his son life lessons and coping with his loss deeply relatable. Experiencing Bayek's sorrow and determination helps make him a compelling character that players can connect with. Another example is exploring the origins of the Assassin's Creed is always fascinating, and Origins succeeds where some prequels falter. Bayek is introduced as the inaugural member of the Assassin Brotherhood, initially referred to as the Hidden Ones. We see him, his wife Aya, who also goes by Ami Net, establish the Brotherhood and its guiding principles, allowing us to witness the creation of this iconic order. Another great example of Bayek's character being a highlight is throughout his journey in the game. Bayek encounters numerous challenges that could deter a weaker individual, yet he remains steadfast. His unwavering moral compass, especially when confronted by figures of power like Cleopatra, inspires a sense of justice in players as we explore the game's choices. Okay, now that I've given why I prefer Bayek over Kassandra, let's talk about each individual strength and who comes out on top. First off, physical strength. Who is stronger, Bayek or Kassandra? Well, for physical strength, I'm going to go with Kassandra on this one. Don't get me wrong, Bayek is strong, but Kassandra is a demigod. She was born as a hybrid and had very high concentration of ECDNA, allowing her for one to wield the spear of Leonidas, which a lot of people don't actually know is a piece of Eden that grants his wielder superhuman abilities. Kassandra was also a fighter for hire during the Peloponnesian War, a period that naturally favored the strong, so her toughness was evident, clearly reflected in her muscular physique. However, her strength was not just about her appearance. Her roots played a massive role in shaping her into the warrior that she was. Born into a Spartan family, a society that prized physical fitness and marital prowess, Kassandra received combat training from a very young age. Also, just being the descendant of King Leonidas set a very high standard for her to aspire to, embedding a legacy of strength and valor from her lineage. But that's pretty much all I can say that puts Kassandra over Bayek, and that is her strength. But in terms of who is the better protagonist, it's pretty obvious it's Bayek. When it comes to large open world games, apart from the story, the world and the characters, one major feature that needs to be done well is side content, whether that's side missions, world activities, exploration aspects, boss fights and so on. Just things that are not main story focused. Both Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey features a lot of side content. But which game does side content better? Let's start with Origins first. In this game, we have of course side quests that I feel are handled pretty well, or at least some of them are. There will be the occasional fetch quest that's present in a lot of open world games, but there are also some standout side quests too. For example, there's side quests that don't involve combat but showcase Bayek's character more. A great one is called Bayek's Promise, where the focus is reminiscing on heartfelt moments that Bayek has with Kemu looking at the stars. There's a lot of emotion in this side quest, and it tells a story of when life was great for Bayek. Another great side quest is Forging Siwa. The focus is on investigating somebody stealing stolen Siwan treasures in a black market, but it quickly shifts to witty humor and saving a little girl's mother. It's a short side quest but a very memorable one, and it showcases the more humorous side of the game and also the violent side at the same time.
Would you like? Would you like?
I've got a nice sword. Would you like?
Apart from the side quest in Origins, there is a lot more varied side content too. There's tombs and ancient mechanisms, where we're able to explore ancient tombs scattered across Egypt. These not only offer puzzles to solve, but also give historical context about ancient Egyptian beliefs and practices. Some tombs contain mechanisms that, when activated, offer lore about the first civilization, which is pretty cool to see, especially for a game slowly shifting away from the Isu lore. There's also the Phylakes, which are elite bounty hunters that start to hunt Bayek after a certain point in the story. Defeating them requires preparation and strategy, and each provides unique rewards upon defeat. There's also war elephants, which are boss fights against heavily armored elephants located in arenas around the map. There's also the arenas and the hippodrome. The arenas are gladiatorial arenas where Bayek can fight waves of enemies and bosses for fame and rewards. And the hippodrome offers chariot racing competitions with several tournaments to win. You see, it does not stop there, as there's also a lot more other side content in the game besides the ones I've mentioned. For example, animal lairs, hunting hermit locations, and also viewpoints. So in summary, there's a lot of side content to sink your teeth into in Origins. When it comes to Assassin's Creed Odyssey side content, it also has a lot of it. For one, there's the side quests, which although I feel like Origins does slightly better, but that's not to say there are bad ones, because Odyssey side quests have some memorable ones too. For example, there's one called A Blood Fever, where choices are the most important part of this side quest, something Origins lacked if I'm being honest. So in this Blood Fever side quest, decisions made during earlier interactions can lead to unforeseen outcomes down the line. The game gave you the choice to save a family threatened with execution due to an illness known as blood fever. However, later on, you'll discover that this decision to save that family allowed the blood fever to spread throughout an entire island, which is a consequence of your decision making. Apart from some great side quests, there is also a lot of other side content too featured in Odyssey. Let's start by talking about sea exploration and battles. While not as central to the gameplay as it was in Black Flag, sailing and naval combat introduced a new dynamic to the game, moving away from the primarily land-based travel seen in Origins with Bayek. Many of the game's islands can only be accessed by boat, leading to exciting sea battles against other ships. Certain missions even require a good deal of naval prowess, making your ability to command a ship pretty important. The Adrestia, which is your vessel in the game, quickly becomes a memorable part of your adventure, from firing arrows and javelins to unleashing flames through the Chimera's breath, which works much like flamethrowers for ships. The Adrestia pretty much has it all. What's more, the options for upgrading your ship are extensive. You can enhance its offensive capabilities with more powerful volleys of arrows and javelins, add extra sections to the ship's fire attacks, fortify its hull to legendary status, and even improve your crew's armor. The ship side of the game is a great addition to the side content. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but personally I'm all for it. Besides the side quests and naval side of the game, there's also the likes of the Cult of Cosmos, a mysterious group similar to the Order of Ancients that you can take down on the side. You just gather clues and hunt down each member, unraveling the organization's influence on the game's world. The cult leader is a topic for another video, so I won't discuss it much here, as I've already spoken about that many times on this channel. There's also the mercenaries, where you can engage with a mercenary system. You're able to rise through the ranks by defeating other mercenaries. This system also impacts how Kassandra is treated in the world, with higher ranks attracting bounties and challenges from other mercenaries. It's like the Phylakes in Origins, but Odyssey's own version of them. There's also arenas, just like in Origins, but I prefer Odyssey's version as the storytelling to it was done pretty well. There were even extra side side quests related to the arena side of the game. There's also forts and military camps to take down. There's the mythical creatures, a topic that is always controversial in this franchise. But I for one personally enjoyed fighting against them in Odyssey. We had the likes of the Minotaur, the Cyclops, and even Medusa as boss fights. Not to mention that annoying boar that was satisfying once you took it down. Now those are just the main pieces of side content in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but that's not to say that's all of it. There is also the likes of the Ostraka riddles, tombs and ancient steels, the free Lost in Tales Greece expansion, conquest battles, and even the discovery tour if you enjoyed that. In summary, there is a lot. But as for which game between Origins and Odyssey has the best side content, I'm actually going to go with Odyssey on this one. I know it might seem like a hot take, but that's my personal preference. After all, you are watching a video of my own opinion, so do not get that confused with the general opinion. So which is the overall better game? Which game do I prefer the most? Assassin's Creed Origins or Assassin's Creed Odyssey? Well, when it came to the world of ancient Egypt versus ancient Greece, I went with ancient Egypt in that regard. Both settings are stunning, so that was probably the hardest decision in this video. When it comes to the story about Origins and Odyssey, this one is a no-brainer, as I went with Origins story. When it comes to the protagonist between Bayek and Kassandra, I personally went with Bayek in this one, but I can see why people would choose Kassandra. And lastly, when it comes to the side content, this one was quite tricky, but I ultimately decided on Assassin's Creed Odyssey side content, as that's my personal preference. So the winner of this Assassin's Creed Versus is Origins. Let me know which game you prefer and why in the comments below. I know a lot of people have very mixed opinions on both of these games, so I'm quite intrigued to see your responses. I've also made an Assassin's Creed Odyssey vs Valhalla video if you want to check that one out too. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and with that said, I'll see you in the next one.